Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to SC3 Supply Chain Dynamics third Hangout event. So we have Dr. Omar Elwakil here with Dr. Bruce Arntzen. Dr. Bruce Arntzen was the instructor for Week 5 and Week 6 Global Supply Chain, and that's what we will be discussing today. I know many of you on the MicroMasters track, you're looking to earn the MicroMasters and apply to the blended program. To join the Master students here on campus, well, Dr. Arntzen is the director of the Masters in Supply Chain and Logistics program, so he's the guy you have to impress, right? So on today's agenda, we've got 3 questions that were posted in the discussion forum that Dr. Arntzen will cover. Then we'll go through the results of the surveys that you were asked to complete in the quick questions for Week 5 and Week 6. Then we'll go into our breakout. Well, actually, Dr. Arntzen will present a couple of questions that you will then discuss in the breakout rooms. Please designate one person or 2 people to post your answers to these questions in the lobby. Then they will be forwarded to us and we will discuss them. So without further ado, let's go through a couple of these questions that were on the discussion forum. The first one comes from Vang Tassel. He asks about the use of pre-shipment inspection, especially quality control, for procurement of engineering materials from India, China, or other so-called Asian tiger countries. Does there already exist a market of reliable expediters in these countries? What is the best practice in purchasing tenders? A separate tender for acquiring such an expediter, or in the tender terms of the purchase?
Well, first starting with that Omar also has some experience in this area, so let me bring his opinion on these things just a moment as well. Yes, there are expediters I know in this country, quite a lot of them, and it sounds like the person asking the question is just starting out, and they may be wrong, but it sounds like you're starting out to begin to do business in some of these countries and have yet to establish relationships with a number of the actors and players who operate there. As you get into it, yes, there are, and you can start with the larger companies whose names are known around the world, and then find the local companies. If you're new at doing this, often it's useful to get connected with a larger global operator, maybe like a Damco or Expeditors and so forth, who already have contacts in all of these countries, right? And then as you get more experienced in operating these countries, you'll become aware of, and you can see that there are other companies that operate there. Do you want to comment any bit more on that?
Yeah, so your argument here is that these are services that 3PLs, for example, can provide, or at least can help you identify,
right.
Local providers of these services. So that would be one avenue you could take in these circumstances.
Yeah, and oftentimes, again, if you're just starting out and don't have a lot of experience in these countries, having an arrangement with a large expediter like a Damco, they will take care of helping you set all these things up. Now, as you get more experience, you can have your own separate contracts where you use different players for different things. But I'm always, if you're going to a new place, go with somebody big who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's what I would suggest.
For an entry strategy, then, as you establish yourself, you can learn more about the market.
Yeah, and also, once you get a local person on the ground in that location, right, then they will know the area. It's very good to have at least 1 or 2 local people that are working with you at the main port that you're going to use, who knows the whole set of players there, and they can help you make arrangements with reputable forwarders and so forth.
Yeah, great. Let's move on to question 2 from Odasuki. He asked, how is the nature of ownership of intellectual property addressed in regions where IP protection is weak, specifically with regards to valuation, where customs cannot value a good that effectively doesn't exist? This is a tricky one.
Good question.
Yeah.
Good question. A lot of multinational corporations are very wary of what intellectual property they locate in different places. We've done supply chain design projects for multinationals in which they will tell you which countries you can and cannot consider. If they're going to have a new factory, where could you put the factory? And sometimes they'll say, we're not going to put the factory in certain countries because we don't want the intellectual property to get away. There's also choices to be made around how you set up your outsourcing or offshoring. If you establish your own wholly owned subsidiary in one of these countries, you have more control over things. That's also the most expensive way to do it. If you hire a company as a contract manufacturer, you're leveraging their facilities and their expertise in that country, but you also have less control. So depending on how vital that intellectual property is to your corporate success, you need to be careful about how you set up your organization in the other country. So the more valuable the intellectual property, the more you would have your own wholly owned subsidiary if you go into those countries at all.
So there's risk associated with licensing, franchising,
right,
and contract manufacturing in countries with weak intellectual property. And
yeah, I mean, there's all these different types of arrangements of you can offer a franchise to a person. You can have somebody license your intellectual property. They come up with all different levels of cost to you and different levels of supervision and your own overhead to manage that. If you're an organization, let's say you were like a McDonald's, where you licensed the whole bundle of intellectual property and logos and your menu and everything, right? Yeah. Versus just you've got a particular chemical formula that you license someone to use it. You have a lot less control of where that goes after that.
Absolutely. So this is a really excellent question, especially in preparation for the midterm.
Is that a hint?
Hint.
That's a hint, huh?
All right. Let's move on to the last question here from Chris Hopp. In order to avoid being accused of dumping, must you sell your product at least at the same price and no lower than its production cost? What happens if you want to be more competitive in the foreign country? Can you sell the product in a range between its production cost and the origin country price? Or is it mandatory that the price be the same as in the country of origin? So he argues that the price also depends on the foreign country's market characteristics. For example, its labor market, laws and regulations, and consumer habits. So this generated a lot of discussion on the discussion boards.
Okay.
Question of dumping. Yeah.
So I'll see if I can add to the discussion. I hope I can. So let's start with the question: must you sell your product at least the same price and no lower than its production cost? So there's several levels here. What's the cost to produce it? What's the price that's charged in the home country? And then what price are you going to charge in some foreign country, right? Yeah. So if you try to sell it below your own cost, you will draw a lot of scrutiny for that. You probably won't get away with that, okay? And so, but then the question is, can you sell it below the price you charge in your home market? Yeah. You will draw scrutiny if you do that. What's interesting is that, and I've in projects that I've done with big multinational corporations, let's say there's a corporation that's based in the United States, and it makes a product, some kind of office supply product. I won't say anything more than that, but it's an office supply product. And in the United States, they have sort of three levels of quality that they sell. You know, the lower end, cheaper quality, the middle, and then the high, the Cadillac quality, right? Mm-hmm. When you go into other markets, developing country markets, what they will find almost always is that if they try to sell their high-end product, they will have to charge a price that will not be competitive in that market, and thus they won't get any sales. They price themselves out of the market, right? So they frequently don't offer the highest quality product in the developing markets. They'll have the lower quality product being sold in those markets, and actually its quality will be the same or similar to the quality of its competitors in that market. So the big European, the big Japanese, the big U.S. companies that are making this product at different quality levels, they also understand that they won't be able to sell it in developing markets, and so they have a lower quality, lower cost product that is what they sell there. Okay, and so they're not really taking their high quality product and selling it at a lower price in a foreign market. They're not selling the same product in that market. They're selling a less expensive product in that market at a much lower price. We've seen examples of companies who have gone out of their way to develop a simplified product at a lower cost that they can sell competitively in developing markets. Right? So that's how they avoid that.
Yeah, excellent. So we've covered 3 questions now. Let's move on to the survey results. So maybe we can post the link to the Google Doc where they can download that if they have not already downloaded. Arthur has just posted that in the lobby.
So if we go through these, it was very interesting. First of all, we were going to ask questions about, take this off here, what trading blocks, or what trading blocks were you, the people who were taking the course, where are you, and what trading block are you part of? And it was very interesting for us because I guess I never realized there were that many trading blocks out there. We had people responding. Now, some of the people misinterpreted the question and listed things that weren't really trading blocks.
WTO.
We got some interesting answers. But there were a lot of, it was what, it looks like there's about 65 trading blocks that were mentioned, and I would have never been able to sit down and write down the names of 65 trading blocks. So that was very interesting to us. Most of the folks who responded belonged to one of the NAFTA countries, right? Canada, United States, and Mexico. So there were 237 folks that said that they were part of NAFTA. There was almost the same number of folks that said they were part of the European Union, which is not surprising. There were 220 folks that said that. And then you had a nice long list of the ASEAN nations, about 86 people there. Mercosur, which is the main trading bloc in South America, there was 79. The Andean Community, 27. I thought it was interesting, the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which it's been announced a couple of places, and there's a lot of buzz about it. It's still waiting to be ratified by several countries, like the United States is debating it in our own Congress, right? But there were 27 folks, and actually a lot of people could have, anybody who was in NAFTA could have named that one as well, for example. So it could have been a much bigger set. Let's see, then the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, 19 people, and on down the list. So it was very interesting that it seems like our audience is aware of trading blocks, but there's a lot of little trading blocks out there for specific regions of the world. Yep. So we found that pretty interesting.
Absolutely. So in lesson 2 here, week 5, there's a question about the Incoterms.
Yeah. So we asked if you've ever made an international shipment before, and about 56% of our folks said yes, they've made an international shipment. About 44% said no, have not made an international shipment. And as you know, the Incoterms are designed, when you make an international shipment, there's lots of little details that go into that. Who's going to arrange for this leg of the journey? Who's going to pay for putting it from the dock onto the ship? And there's a lot of those kind of things, right? And the Incoterms are essentially templates that says, well, which template are we going to use? Well, we're going to use FOB, or we're going to use CIF, right? And then by specifying that, that answers who's going to pay for all these things and who's going to arrange all these things, right? So it's a real shortcut method. Now, it was interesting that FOB was by far the most popular among the people in our audience that were taking the test. I think that overall in the world, I think CIF is used more frequently, but it may be that our audience is not necessarily the heavy shippers. You know, if we had only shippers who were participating in the course, I think CIF would be by far on top. But we have an audience of all sorts of people, and FOB was what they had used more, right? So the top ones were FOB at 225 responders, CIF at 172, DDP. Now DDP is kind of famous because it's the most responsibility on the shipper. The shipper has to pay for everything, the delivery, all the little steps, duty paid, deliver it right to the guy's doorstep. So DDP came in third at 130. And then the other extreme, which is X-Works. X-Works means the shipper simply pushes it out through his own back door, and the guy who's buying it has to arrange everything and pay for everything to get it wherever it's going. Right? And that came in fourth at 118. And again, in the larger world of commerce, DDP and X-Works are, I think, used less frequently than some of these other ones. So that was interesting results.
Yeah, great. Quick question 8, lesson 2 asked about Panama Canal expansion. One of your favorite topics.
Yeah. We've been taking our student class at MIT down to Panama for about the last 5 years. And coincidentally, while we've been going down there, the country of Panama has been trying to expand their canal. And every year that we go, it's a little bit more completed than it was the year before. And this January when we go, we'll finally be able to see ships going through it for the first time. There'll actually be water in the locks. We've never seen water in the locks before. We've seen bulldozers and everybody else in the locks, but not actual ships and water. So it'll be interesting. And the question we asked was, and this is a question that actually when we go into the breakout rooms, I want you to talk about some more, which was, ever since they announced that the Panama Canal was going to be widened and made larger, and so that the volume of the ships, instead of being about a 5,000 TEU ship, you can now get maybe a 13 or 14,000 TEU ship. So it's not quite 3 times as big, but it's almost 3 times as big a ship, right? And the question is, if these much larger ships go through the canal, is that going to change all the routings? Is that going to change the behavior of international trade, right? And so one of the questions is there going to be the appearance of some port that emerges as a natural hub for international shipping? Yeah. Okay. Imagine that in the limit, if ships got larger and larger and larger and larger, at some point their ability to bounce along the coastline, picking up and dropping off. Yeah. If you have an immense ship, the time it would have to spend in port loading and offloading gets much, much, much larger. And so if it tried to do the bounce routine that the current strings do today, its transit time would get really, really long. And so the question is, okay, people don't want a long transit time, but you have a much bigger ship. Is some port going to rise out of the ocean and become this giant international hub? So we asked the students, do you think that's going to happen? And it was interesting, 85% of the students said, yes, we think that some place is going to become an international hub. And then we asked the question, where do you think that hub is going to be? And that was very interesting, because we've been debating this question here at MIT for 5 years now. And we've been, in fact, it was an assignment we would give our students, and we'll probably do that again this January, is we assign each team of students to a different port around the North and South America, and have them look at what's going on in that port, and what are they doing, what's their strategy, do you think it's the right strategy, are they going to actually attract those bigger ships, right? And so the audience that responded said that Miami was going to be the hub. 190 votes for Miami. Havana, Cuba got 128 votes. Interesting how quickly Cuba came from nothing into second place. I'm not sure it's going to happen that fast. The other natural places, the Freeport, Bahamas, came in third with 93 people thought that's what it was going to be. MIT, if you're south of the U.S. border and you say MIT, everybody knows that you're talking about the Manzanilla International Terminal. You're not talking about anything here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Yeah. So the Manzanilla International Terminal came in fourth at 68 votes. Kingston, Jamaica came in with 34 votes. Balboa, Panama. Now it's interesting, Balboa is on the Pacific Ocean side of the canal. So if you were having a hub and spoke, it may be in the wrong place, although the bigger ships, and there are ships, of course, that are much bigger that can't go through the canal at all, right? There are ships that are much bigger than 14,000 TEUs, okay? And so they can certainly call it Balboa, but the hub system after that may have some problems. They came in at 31 votes, and then Houston, Texas, and Barranquilla, Colombia. I think some of the folks, loyal Colombians, might have voted for their hometown. I see that Santa Marta, Colombia got 1 vote. We have one of the students in my class from Santa Marta. She probably voted for her hometown, and so forth. So that was interesting. So Miami was the big winner in our poll. That's something that I think can be debated, and when you get to the breakout session, I think that's a rich fodder for having a debate.
Okay, great. Let's skip currency fluctuations and get into week 6, lesson 2, international manufacturing.
Okay. Yeah. So we asked our students, have you ever worked for an entity that was a large international manufacturing company? And about 40% said yes, about 56% said no, and 5% weren't sure. And so the next question we had from that was, this was part of the sourcing and offshoring and outsourcing lesson that we had. How many people were working for a company that was an international arm of a multinational company? Because those are the folks that get outsourced or reshored or offshored. That's where that happens. And then we asked the question between 1990 and 2010, and that was the period of time when there was a tremendous amount of offshoring going on. It actually started in the 1980s, but in the 1990s and early 2000, it seemed like everything was moving to China and Southeast Asia, and then now more recently, trends have reversed themselves some. But this asked, during that period, 1990 2010, did your home country gain jobs or did you lose jobs? And then the follow-on question was going to ask, why do you think that was, that it gained or lost jobs, right? And so it was interesting to see that there was about, it looks like about 28%, about 28% of the respondents thought that their country gained jobs, and about 2/3 of the respondents thought that their country lost jobs during that period of time, and about 5% of the people didn't know if they gained or lost jobs, right? Then the question after that was, why do you think, what was the big factors? And we had a list of factors people could choose from as to what would be the cause of, so if you gained or lost jobs, why? And so, for example, if you gained jobs, was it because you had a very low labor cost and a large labor pool? Were there fewer restrictions on exports? Were there fewer restrictions on quality? Did you have new infrastructure, bridges and roads and airports and so forth? Was it because you had a highly educated workforce? Were there fewer restrictions on working conditions? Did you have less expensive energy costs? Did you have new factories and new equipment? Were there fewer restrictions of pollution? So those were the choices we gave people. And in terms of why people thought that they lost jobs, was because other countries had, and the leading one was fewer restrictions on working conditions. So they thought that that contributed the most. In other words, their own country had more restrictions on working conditions, more employee safety and so forth. The other countries, they thought, would have less restrictions on that, maybe a more business-friendly environment. Let's see what was in second place there. I think in second place was that they thought other countries had newer equipment, newer factories. The reason why people think they gained jobs, they thought the leading cause of why they thought their country gained jobs is because new factories and equipment was the leading cause. and new infrastructure was the second leading cause of why they thought they gained jobs.
Yeah.
Right?
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Arntzen. So the results of these surveys are available in Google Docs, and if Arthur could provide the link again. So you can review them on your own time. At the moment, we'd like you to go into your breakout rooms and discuss the two questions that Dr. Arntzen has raised. If we could repeat those.
Yeah, so there's two questions that that we're discussing here at MIT that we find very interesting,
Yeah.
and I think this is an opportunity. You have people from all over the world participating in this breakout session and from all different perspectives and so forth. The first one, also the most fun one, I think, is the Panama Canal. There was a lot of debate before it opened. It's now open. It's had about 200 ships go through. 200 of the larger ships have now gone through the canal. What do you see is happening? What do you think is happening? Do you think international shipping routes and strategies are changing? Do you think they will continue to change? Will there be hubs growing, or will the big ships continue to stop on the coastlines but just make fewer stops? I mean, they could simply, instead of stopping 3 places along the coast of the United States, they may just hit 1 place, okay, or 2 places. What do you think is going to, so what's going to be the impact of the Panama Canal expansion on shipping lines and shipping patterns around the world? The second question was to do with sourcing and offshoring and nearshoring. The whole era of all the jobs and manufacturing all seeming to move to China, I think is starting to lose speed, and some flow is now coming back to other places. A little bit's coming back in the United States, but I'm curious to see from your perspectives from countries really around the world, are you seeing manufacturing jobs moving back into your countries? Are you still seeing manufacturing jobs flowing out of your countries? And why do you think they're coming back to your country? Why do you think they're flowing out? I'd be anxious to see what your perspectives are on that question.
Great. So let's go into our breakout rooms now and discuss these two questions. Give it about 15 minutes or so. And please designate 1 or 2 people to collect your answers and post them in the lobby, and then we will discuss them with Dr. Arntzen. So let's go into our breakout rooms now.